Now, our first stop on the show today is Nigeria, where it's 2 days to the cash swap policy February 10 deadline. Or is there a deadline? Earlier today, the Supreme Court of Nigeria ruled to restrain the federal government and the central bank from implementing the planned deadline given to exchange your old Naira notes for new ones. Today, we continue our coverage of the cash crisis in the country. The West African country has been plagued by fuel and cash scarcity, the latter coming on the back of the central bank's cash swap policy targeted at a cashless economy. Let's gauge the atmosphere in the commercial hub Lagos. Adeshewa Odushoga is the lady on ground, and she's joining us for more on this. Adeshewa, tell us where you have been and what you have found out.
All right, Kimini, thanks for having me on the show. I'm standing behind one of the POS agents. I think two of them, as you can see, and then I've been speaking to them, speaking to bank customers. And the agitations are still here. People are quite frustrated with the current situation on ground. Of course, the CBN has set a February 10 deadline, but we have a new update, and the Supreme Court is restraining the CBN and the federal government from implementing the February 10 deadline, which means that Nigerians can still spend their old Naira notes even after the February 10 deadline that was set. But however, POS operators, we've seen that they have been on the lips of many Nigerians because of the exorbitant charges that they have put on the prices of transactions. We've been speaking with them, and they said that it's been quite difficult for them to also get cash, to also meet up with the demands of their customers now. Before we see that to withdraw 5,000 Naira, you have to pay 100 Naira transaction charges. But now you have to pay as high as 1,000 Naira to withdraw 5,000 Naira. And they say that this still stands until they have the situation resolved. Some of them say even the banks are not supplying them with the cash, and they also have to join every Nigerian to stand on queues for many hours, which means sometimes they have to forfeit a 24-hour business time to stand on queues to withdraw the cash. So they say that they have no choice but to increase their charges, as some of them also even buy from market women, from other people that have access to cash, because we know, of course, as we know, Nigeria is an informal sector that is largely dependent on cash.
Even aware of the latest Supreme Court ruling, and if they are, what do they think about it?
All right, with the Supreme Court ruling, it means that maybe the pressure would reduce from many Nigerians, because we saw that when the January 31st deadline was still on, we saw how much people trooped into commercial banks to pay, to deposit their old notes, thinking that the new Naira would come out in circulation. And even when the CBN extended the deadline, you still have this pressure going on, and people are trying to make sure that they give out, they give to the banks their old Naira notes. But as it stands, it looks like people do no longer care whether or not they have the old notes or the new notes. They just want to have cash at hand and be able to spend. So I was speaking to one civil servant here, and he said that he was paid his salary last Saturday, and up until now he's unable to even have access to his money, and he has his families and children that are no longer that they are not able to go to school because he cannot pay their school fees. And then at the moment they say that whether the new notes or the old notes, they are still going to keep spending the cash as long as they have access to the cash. So with the Supreme Court ruling, I think it's going to give more Nigerians the confidence to still go on to go ahead with spending the cash, whether new or whether old or the new notes.
Well, I wonder if people know, and I'm also curious whether you have anyone to speak to now. But while you're thinking about that question I just asked, I want you to tell us, we know that some banks have had to close shop because of fear of attacks. What is the situation today? Have they come back to work?
Well, yeah, none of the banks have opened. As a matter of fact, while we were roaming, we saw that some of these banks are still shut, especially one who may not want their name to be disclosed. But that particular bank the customers have, often, complained about their services, and these banks have now shut down. We visited some of the branches right here in this particular part of Lagos State, and saw that the banks are under lock and key, and no customers are inside. Not even their ATMs, the automated teller machines are working. And even those that did not even announce that they were going to close their banks, some of them have their banks still closed at the moment. Shawa,
thank you for the report. We'll see you soon in the office. We're really grateful. Adeshawa Odushoga there, she brought us a live report from the ground on how things are happening with, Nigeria's cash crisis and also the latest ruling from the Supreme Court. Right now, let's talk about female genital mutilation. Another really disturbing topic, isn't it? Now, if you have children around you, we also advise some parental guidance. Now, here's the thing. Around 1 in 4 girls and women, or about 52 million worldwide, have experienced female genital mutilation performed by health personnel, pointing to an alarming trend in the medicalization of female genital mutilation or cutting. Now, what is this? Female genital mutilation or cutting refers to all non-medical procedures that cause harm to the female genitalia. It is considered a violation of human rights, health, and bodily integrity for girls and women. In 2023 alone, there are 4.32 million girls around the world who are at risk of undergoing FGM, as it's called. Although a global issue, FGM is primarily seen in 30 countries in Africa and the Middle East, according to the United Nations. Now, every year, on the 6th of February, the world observes a day to reiterate its stance against the practice. This year was no exception, and that's why we are on the square today. I am Kemini Amano, and you're welcome to the program. Joining our gathering today are Dialens Noble. He's ART clinician and founder of Saving Women and Children Foundation, based in Lagos, Nigeria. We also have Melanie Ishola, who is a journalist and anti-FGM advocate. She's based in the Netherlands. And then we're joined by Christiana Kanu, who's a survivor of FGM and treasurer for the Forum Against Harmful Practices. She's also joining us from Sierra Leone. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the square.
Good.
Indeed. So my plan was for us to determine what FGM is, but I'll switch it up a little. And Christiana, I hope it's okay with you if I ask you to share your survivor story with us. How did it occur? How old were you? And how have you managed since then?
Good afternoon, everyone. And my name is Christiana Waikanu from Sierra Leone, in Cambia District, Cambia Town, where my organization is. I was initiated into in Sierra Leone, we call it Bondo Society. I'm part of the Bondo Society. The first process is the FGM, that is the cutting. When I was in class 6, and I was taken there innocently. In those days, girls were not informed what is happening in the Bondo Society. Until the day you are going to be initiated, that was the day you will know what is happening in India. So I was taken there innocently, not knowing that they are going to cut me as a gala by then. And my experience was so terrible. I was bleeding a week. I was nearly to death, but God saved me from that. And since then, when I was a girl, I said to myself, I will make sure that my girls, if I give birth to a girl, she will not go through the process. And even if I have, as a guardian of raising girls in my home where I will be married, and I will also be a champion of change to abolish FGM in my community. So that brought the formation of self-help and development everywhere, which is shaped Sierra Leone. That is my organization.
And you have been helping lots of women. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And may I add that I also apologize if it brought back really unpleasant memories for you. How widespread is the practice of, female genital mutilation or cutting in Sierra Leone?
In my region, which is the northwest part of Sierra Leone, the cutting is removal of the clitoris, and it is being removed totally. And after the first day of removing of the clitoris, you will not take back until after 3 days. On the third day, when the women that the sowe comes to bathe the girls, any semblance of clitoris that showed up or anything, they will cut it again the second time, which is, and after the third day, the sixth day again, any semblance of the clitoris will cut it again. So it's double pains. It's double the pains of the girl.
Yes.
Which sometimes may lead to death. And in the northern part of Sierra Leone, it's really barbaric. It's really painful on the process.
I see.
So I'll
come back to you to share more of your personal experience. I'll move on to the islands now. The islands, like Christiana has said, in her case or in the practice in Sierra Leone, it is the clitoris that is affected. But based on today's readings that I did, as the netizens will say, I was today's years old when I realized that we have types of the cutting and the FGM. Now talk to us about that.
For the clarification, and there are basically 4 forms of female genital mutilation. The first one is the clitoridectomy, which is the partial or total removal of the clitoris. Then the second is an excision, which is a removal of the labia minora or the labia majora, which are the lips of the vagina. The third is what is called infibulation. This is basically narrowing the vaginal opening, thereby creating a seal. That can be done with or without the total removal of the clitoris. And the last type are classified as others. We have things like piercing, burning, scraping, various vices of that nature. So basically there are 4 forms. We have victims who a clitoridectomy was just performed for them, while some is an excision, some is an infibulation. And in the cases of infibulation, most times they just leave an area for urine to pass. Basically, that's what's just done.
And neither of these forms, forms is better than the other. That will be correct, won't it?
Yes, exactly.
Right. I'm moving to Melanie now. Melanie, you're in the Netherlands, but you've been advocating for this for a while now. Talk to us about the reasons that some of these cultures give for what they do.
Thank you. The reasons are key because then we can understand why the people do it and essentially how we can influence them to abandon the practice. For starters, based on research that I did with a documentary I produced 3-4 years ago in the local government area with the highest prevalence of FGM in Nigeria, and this local government area is in Oyo State. It's called Kajola Local Government Area. I spoke to market women elders in the markets and in the public spaces, and I'm told there are 4 reasons why they engage in female genital mutilation. Number 1 is that a woman or a girl who is not cut runs at a very high risk of becoming promiscuous in the society. So the girl is left uncut, unmutilated. She grows up to become a prostitute. That's according to their belief. The second thing is it's a taboo for the clitoris to compete with the penis during sexual intercourse. That's also their belief. The third thing is the clitoris must not touch the baby's head during childbirth. That equally is another strong reason for them. Another one would be that a woman who is not cut definitely has troubles being delivered of a baby. And in fact, they went to the extent of saying if a woman is not caught, she's definitely having a cesarean section during a childbirth. That it's led to not being caught has led to lots of women losing their lives in the past. This is a cultural belief. They believe it the same way they believe they need air to breathe every day. I tested this hypothesis by going back last December. I went back with my team of advocates, and our movement is #Don'tCarter. And we went back to Kajala local government area of Okeo, Semile, Inia, Ilua, and a host of other communities there to talk to the traditional rulers, the local advocates there, and I talk of Rural People Development Initiative, in person of Princess V.O. Adetono, who leads the organization, and they do massive work all year round advocating against the practice. And what I found, especially going back to the same people I had first started research with some 3-4 years ago, is that the practice is essentially about the same. And am I surprised? The UNICEF gave the figure at 96% prevalence rate as of December last year, whereas when I started, it was 98%. So there's been a 0.2% difference change. You could say that's progress. But honestly, with this decade of activity, the decade of the FGM advocacy, according to the United Nations, stemming, ending, eliminating FGM by 2030, we still have a very long way to go. And that really is saddening.
Well, at least, you know, these reasons that you have mentioned, we know that they are untrue. But as you said, these are things that they believe like the air they breathe. How much of an obstacle do you think that has posed in advocacy, and what ways could people or advocates like yourself go around the problem?
Thank you. It's a lot more interesting because I am not just an advocate. I equally am a survivor. And a next point to that would be that this local government area is a neighboring local government area to my local government area of origin in the same state, or your state, whereby I can then talk about my local government area, Ibarapa Central, having a 68% prevalence rate of FGM. How is this significant? It is significant because then I look at what impact FGM has had on me. I look at my sexual struggle as an adult, as a wife. I look at my struggles delivering my children. Every time I've had a childbirth, I have had episiotomy. It is not the doctors cutting me. It is the baby's head literally tearing me open to find the way out of my vulva during childbirth. And I look at a host of other matters like painful menstruation and a host of other things. When you put all of these things I just shared with you in a testimonial, depending on the platform, it could be one-on-one with focus groups, talking to these older women in the village communities, as I do, or it could be in a video format, you push on social media, you share on television, or you could actually produce a documentary like I've done, and then give sequels to these to ensure that you have a sustained advocacy, essentially repeating the same thing. Female genital mutilation is injurious. It has not known health benefit to the woman. And then you essentially now also involve men. And I love this year's theme for the Zero Tolerance Day against female genital mutilation. I have all boys, for example, and I had my boys put together a video. I filmed them and was pushed out. And it's interesting that I have a lot of my friends who have male children say to me, put together a poetry for us. We'll have our boy children deliver it. And we can raise the voices of men and boys. My husband also rallied to support of his friends at the office. And they raised the voice, him sharing how it personally impacts him as a husband of a survivor of female genital mutilation.
Indeed, and that's a point that, you know, we don't talk about when it comes here. It affects the women and it affects the men as well. Perhaps the Allens could tell us more about that. But I want to go to Christiana now. Christiana, what are some of the reasons that the people of Sierra Leone practice FGM, and is it any different from what Melanie has shared with us?
Well, in Sierra Leone, one of the reasons why girls and women are being initiated into the bondo or doing the FGM One is the culture says if a woman is not being initiated into the society, that woman is not clean. That is one aspect. And the other one, they say if the woman is not initiated into the society, the woman will be promiscuous, meaning she's going to have a lot of men jumping from one man to another. And the other one says that it's really a problem for you, you will not have a man to marry you. And the criteria for a woman in Sierra Leone to marry, you must be initiated into the Bondo society. That is part of the northern province. That is their belief. And sometimes there have been, if you are in the rural area, they give laws, even if you want to go and fetch water. Girls that are not initiated, they preempt them not to go and fetch water. They say, Boka will not come here. Boka means non-initiate. They will put a law that will lead these girls will not go to at least access water for their own personal use. So because of that, all these things, parents thought it fit that girls should be initiated. If you are being initiated, you be a real woman. A real woman is when you go through the initiation of the Bondo society, where you'll be trained of a lot of things. Say they will teach you how to raise your children, how to take care of your husband,
right,
how to do a lot of domestic work. So because of this, parents want their girls to go there. But in our own case in Sierra Leone, as we a coalition, which is FAP, Forum Against Harmful Practice, which has an organization of 23 that come together to form Forum Against Harmful Practices, we stand say zero tolerance to FGM. Yes, we want the culture to continue, but we want to remove the harm, that the cutting that we want to be abolished. Then all other aspects of the Bondo society, it is very important for our girls to be part of the culture.
So how is the advocacy going in Sierra Leone, in the Bondo society that you mentioned now? Is it working? Are you able to get to the leaders of these communities, the girls and the women, to help them out?
Yes, that's why we have our strategy of dialoguing. We do dialogue with parents. We have anti-FGM of husband clubs. We have anti-FGM clubs of mothers club. And we also have anti-FGM of school clubs. And all of these people, we engage them as a community, because parents has a lot, especially the men, the husband has a lot to say. They are the financial of FGM. They pay their money so that their girls will be initiated. So that's why we are dialoguing with them. We also dialogue with the MPs, members of parliament, ministers, and also line ministries like the Internal Affairs Ministry, Social Welfare and Gender Ministry. All those ones we have been dialogue with them, so that they can see that
would you then say that you're changing minds in Sierra Leone?
Yes. We are changing minds. The mindset.
And
gradual thing.
Absolutely. We are happy to hear that, and we'll hear more about how you're changing minds in Sierra Leone. I move on to the islands now. The islands, one of the things that the UN is concerned about is the medicalization of this practice. So people have moved on from wanzams, they have moved on from community leaders doing this, and then, because it's now in a healthy environment, they think it's okay. Talk to us about medicalization of this process.
Yeah, thank you. In time past, it was more of a sociocultural problem, looking at traditional leaders and community heads spearing and carrying the torchlight. But it's moved past that now. There's a concern about medicalization of FGM. We have traditional birth attendants, midwives, nurses that indulge in some of these practices right from the corners and the confines of their home, because of a mind shift or a mentality that has grown for a very long time. One thing we have to understand is that behavioral patterns don't just immediately change. things that have been going on for 20, 30 years, it would take a huge learning and relearning to change some of those ideologies or ways of thinking. So medicalization gives the community or a group of stakeholders the belief that if these medical personnel or these healthcare providers can indulge in some of these practices, that means it has some benefits of some sort. But the reverse is the case. No benefits whatsoever. Rather, they just leave short-term and long-term complications, basically.
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, we'll discuss how the government could help in the fight against female genital mutilation. We'll also look at some of the consequences, because we know that some of the girls bleed to death. We'll find out how we can deal with those health problems women have after that. Stay with us.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
Welcome back to the square. Today we're discussing zero tolerance for female genital mutilation or cutting. This year on February 6th, we marked 25 years of advocacy, and we've been looking at, the best ways that we can help women and girls who are at risk of this practice. Still with me, Melanie Ishola. She's a journalist, a survivor, and anti-female genital mutilation advocate. We also have Christiana Kanu, who's also a survivor of FGM. She's treasurer of the Forum Against Harmful Practices. Melanie is joining us from Netherlands. Christiana is from Civilian. Ladies, thank you so much for your patience. Melanie, you start off with us over here now. We've talked about girls who are at risk, but let's talk about girls who have gone through the process already and what kind of help exists in the society for them. Is there any at all?
Thank you for this. I think it's a really critical question, to be honest. And while we may look at girls who are at risk as about the most important, because then essentially they haven't yet been caught and they have a high chance of being saved. But let's talk about girls and women like me who have been caught and what help exists for us. For some of us, raising our levels of consciousness has helped to a great degree to liberate us from what would look like the bondage you're put, the prison, as one of my friends from Indonesia put it today, that he sees it as a sort of prison. And I think that psychosocial first aid actually does a great work of helping women in my category. So what would a psychosocial first aider do? A psychosocial first aider can actually connect you as a survivor to tools, to organizations that are able to provide support, able to provide education for you, and possibly, because there are definitely those amongst us who need therapy to heal. You do realize that part of the side effect of female genital mutilation is trauma. It could be post-traumatic stress disorder for some women. And sometimes this trauma can be with you through life, especially when you have to, in the case of a married lady, endure painful sex in your marriage. And it's expected that because you're a married lady, you're available as many times as possible with your spouse to have sexual copulation. So with women like that, therapy is a very strong way of ensuring that they stay healed, safe. However, one thing I have started to advocate when I meet people like me are people who are being caught and have come to the consciousness of the fact of the things that have been done against them. And I co-opt us into a sort of, how do I put it? not an association, essentially. It's just a group of women of like experience.
Like-mindedness and like experience.
Experiences, yes, who are able to share their pain and literally look at testimonials of one person from the other and simply just draw strength and know that you're not alone.
So tell me, what is the absence, as a growing young girl who had survived FGM, what did the absence of the psychosocial support do to you growing up?
I think this is the magical question, honestly. Do you know why? Why is you could have survived female genital mutilation and not know. And I think that looks like, what are you talking about? Yes, I didn't know I was cut until 3 years ago when I started to research about female genital mutilation. So did I have a clitoris all along? No, I didn't have. Did I need the clitoris all along? Yes, I needed it. Before I was 33, I've had 2 children. So I've had the need for the clitoris, but it was absent. But I didn't even know that I didn't have it. So I say to a lot of women, as the first point of advocacy to women that I believe have been caught or stand at a high chance of having been caught but are not even aware, to please put a mirror down there. I say it all the time, put a mirror down there, check it, check your vulva, check your vagina. You may just want to find out something that you didn't know existed there. So as a girl, I didn't know I was cut. I only happened to know that I was cut 3 years ago, and I've had to live with it ever since. So the very essence of this is drawing attention to the clitoris.
Melanie, I'd let you continue, but I'm really, and I'm teary that you had no idea that this had been done to you, obviously, because it must have been done at a very young age. And you found out only 3 years ago that this is what has happened to you. What was that moment like?
I won't lie to you. It was an epiphany. And I guess a lot more on my husband than it was to me. Because then it helps us to understand the struggle that we have had sexually as a couple. And then I remember that night when he said to me, so you said you called your mom and mom said to you this and that. What does that mean to you? He asked me that straight question. And I understood it was essentially the connector to the dots that we had already playing in our heads. And of course, playing on our matrimonial bed. When, as a matter of fact, or where, as a matter of fact, we've had struggles. And I said to him, it brings closure. It makes me understand that, as a matter of fact, something was done against me, which has essentially disempowered me, disenfranchised me, and has caused a bulk of the struggles that I have had sexually.
I am so sorry to hear, and I apologize even more if it has brought back memories you had put away since the last 3 years. Anyway, Christina, let's talk about how our governments can help, because it would seem that FGM has been left in the quarters of women, and it really should be a public health issue. It's not. How can our governments help? Christina, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our government in Sierra Leone is doing their bit, but not enough to our work we do to the abolishment of FGM in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone government is saying age of consent, and purpose of coalition, we are speaking one voice of saying zero tolerance to FGM, because FGM has no limit of age. Even at age 50, age 20, if you are being caught, you are going to have the negative effect of it. So the government is saying age of consent. And I can remember our recent engagement with line ministries like the Gender and Children's Affairs, political affairs, social welfare, education, local government, and rural development. We engage these ministries to see, because there is already a strategy developed in 2016, so that we can have a tool that we can work with as CSO working on the abandonment of FGM in Sierra Leone. But unfortunately, the past government turned it down, and up to now, as I'm speaking to you, it's still not approved by government. So we recently, by telling them the negative impact of FGM, but they say they are going to work on age of consent. And we say, yes, we as a coalition, we are going to engage categories of our engagement to say everything is harmful to our girls and women. So let's abandon it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, if you look at our dialogue, we have dialogue with the paramount chiefs, with the Soweys themselves, the girls of them themselves, the media. We have engaged a lot of the community people just to see that how negative this thing is. Yeah. So and we also targeted the boys themselves and also the husband, because it has negative impact on them as well.
Fantastic.
Because in the Northern Province, that's why we have a high rate of divorce cases. Because our women have what it takes to satisfy their husband. Though they hold on to the culture that if women don't go through the process, it's not a real woman. But it's affecting our women and girls. The
counter effect takes place. I'm afraid I'm sorry I'm rushing you through this, but let's go to the islands now. The islands, how can the medical profession make sure that girls are not brought to their facilities, particularly those medical outfits in at-risk areas? What can we do to ensure that this does not take place there and does not go back to the Wanzam at the same time? Quite tricky.
First of all, we have to understand that FGM is a human rights violation, basically. And in Nigeria, I think a bill was passed in 2015 to end FGM. But the challenge we have with things like this is implementation, follow-up, and actually things being done. If there is a conscious knowledge that if this practice is carried out, there are ramifications, there are laws that will be instilled if one is to carry out one of these processes or these procedures. I believe the reuptake will be a bit reduced, licenses will be suspended. If there is that fear factor instilled, and a bit more of education, because education here is very, very important. Like I said, it's difficult to change cultural and sociocultural beliefs that have stood the test of time over 10, 20, 30 years. Because 2 or 3 times, a woman that has been caught in the past is likely to have a child go through that same process because of that belief system. So if there are laws, if there are stiffer laws and implementation of these laws, I know the laws are there since 2015, stiffer laws that can be implemented against female genital mutilation, I believe it will reduce to a significant.
Very well. Not only I'll give you the last minute on the program today. Talk to our community leaders, because it would all begin at the mindset. Talk to the community leaders, the men and the women, especially the women who undertake some of these practices in their societies. What would you say to them?
Thank you. I would say to them very quickly that when we leave our girls unmutilated, we're empowering the girl child. Not only are we empowering her to stay chaste, we're giving her choices, and she, at the end of the day, has the power to enjoy herself. And as a result of the quality of life that she leads, we're actually strengthening family values. If family value is what we care about, we should leave the girl unmutilated. She would enjoy sex better, be able to pleasure herself, her husband, and essentially carry out her reproductive rights and activities a lot more stresslessly.
Very well. Melanie and Christiana, special thank you for sharing your story with us. And we hope to talk on a better note than this. And it would be that we have made progress in saving more girls and helping those who have gone through the process. The Allens, thank you also for your contributions. We'll see you some other time. For you watching us, remember that it's important to remove the threats to advocacy, which includes us and our mindsets. It's important we also help the girls who may have gone through the process already with psychosocial support. My name is Kamini Amano. I'll see you same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.